A millionaire CEO lived as a lowly employee, falling for a desperate girl. Jake stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his sleek office, the Detroit skyline glistening under the midday sun. The weight of a scandal loomed over him, a dark cloud threatening to engulf his tech startup. As headlines screamed about unethical practices, he felt the suffocating pressure of his family's expectations. His father's shady legacy gripped him as tightly as the tailored suit that felt more like a shackle. But amidst the chaos, one face emerged in his thoughts. Emily, the waitress who had once smiled at him over the counter of a greasy diner, her own dreams stitched together with hope and grit. As a fry cook, Jake knew what it meant to scrape by, to laugh hard during late-night shifts with Emily, the determined single mother who was always juggling despair with her infectious laughter. Their conversations were tinted with dreams of a better life, moments of profound understanding deepened by their shared experiences. They had spit-shined the mundane into something special, forging a bond unthinkable in his current world. Yet here he was, drifting back into that very same diner, the fluorescent lights flickering and the scent of fryer oil wrapping around him. Everything felt more real in that familiar chaos. But today, the weight pressed down harder. A shocking exposé on his company had dropped like a bomb, leaving his empire shuddering. Should he put his family's legacy above the newfound integrity he admired in Emily? He contemplated her unwavering spirit, the way she fought for her daughter while juggling a dozen precarious plates. The contrast to his privileged upbringing was stark. He felt unmoored, questioning the purpose behind the wealth and status he had worked so hard to achieve. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension mounted. Would defending his company mean standing by the very practices he had sworn to avoid? The internal struggle was suffocating, his heart racing as he flipped through potential responses. With each passing minute, the stakes grew, the impending choice threatening to extinguish his connection with Emily forever. He longed to lean into her world of authenticity, but feared the repercussions of being seen as weak in the eyes of his colleagues. He had worked too hard to rise from the ashes. What would he be sacrificing? Just then, a call from his lawyer broke him from his spiral. Jake, the fallout is escalating. We might have uncovered some deeper issues tied to your family's past, the very foundation of what you're trying to protect. Every muscle in his body tensed as the realization hit him. Everything he built could crumble, pulling Emily down with him. Was he to fight for a legacy steeped in shadows? Or could he expose the truth and risk shattering the image he'd cultivated to distance himself from his father's mistakes? With the seconds ticking away, Jake faced an unbearable decision, one that would not only reshape his future, but could also tear away the fragile bond he shared with Emily. Jake's mind raced as he paced the stark whiteness of his office, the shadows of doubt creeping closer. The city outside buzzed with life, a stark contrast to the turmoil swelling within him. His grip tightened around his phone, an anchor in this storm of indecision. The question loomed larger. How could he reconcile his past and present? Could he navigate the treacherous waters of his family's legacy without sacrificing the values he admired in Emily? He took a deep breath, attempting to ground himself in reality. Emily embodied resilience, a quality he recognized as essential not just for her survival, but also for the potential future he now envisioned. He couldn't forget how she fought for her daughter's education, juggling countless bills while radiating warmth. Was it possible that, in confronting the darkness of his family's past, he could emerge not as a villain, but as a man who stood for something more? The thought propelled him into action. He reached for his laptop, the eyes of the world pressing down on him through the screen. This scandal didn't just threaten his company, It threatened his identity. He clicked away at the keys, determination coursing through him. What if he could lead a new direction, one that dismantled the toxic legacy his father had built? Transparency and integrity could be his shield, a new narrative crafted from accountability, rejecting the betrayals that had fueled his family fortune. Yet there was Emily. His heart tightened at the thought of her. If he tore down the very structures his family had built, would she see him as he once was, a fry cook looking to heal and grow, or merely as the product of a lineage tainted by greed? Tapping into this tumult, he reached out to her, fingers hovering over the screen. They hadn't spoken since he achieved prominence, blending ambition with the shadows of past mistakes. Pulling his focus to the message field, he typed, "We need to talk. About everything." He hesitated. What if she didn't understand? But the urgency of his situation overcame his fears. Pushing send, he sank into the chair, the weight of his decision settling in. There were no guarantees she'd be receptive, but to deny her now would be to deny his own chance at redemption. Time passed in agonizing silence, each second stretching with possibilities and fear. When his phone buzzed, Jake nearly jumped. The notification read her name. His pulse quickened. "Jake, I'm at the diner." That simple reply ignited a spark of hope inside him. He needed clarity, not just for the company, but for himself, and perhaps for the possibility of something real with her. He grabbed his jacket and headed out, each step echoing the duality of his existence. As he approached the diner, its neon sign flickered like his resolve. Should he reveal who he truly was, or maintain the polished facade? Just stepping inside, the cacophony of clinking plates and murmured conversations enveloped him. Warmth radiated from familiar faces, but he felt distant, adrift. Emily spotted him at the counter, her expression an unreadable mix of concern and curiosity. As he sat down, the world faded, leaving only her soft gaze. Time stood still, and in this moment he had to decide. Who was he going to be? Whatever truths he unveiled today would not only redefine his path, but could shift everything he once assumed about her and their connection. He leaned in, the silence hanging between them charged with potential. "Emily," he began, but the weight of his fears clawed at his voice. The moment held before them, heavy with both challenge and promise. Could he take the step into vulnerability, or would he retreat into silence once more? The next few minutes would change everything. Jake's heart raced as he looked into Emily's eyes, searching for the right words, the necessary courage. The weight of the moment felt colossal, a confluence of histories and hopes colliding. He could see the expectation written on her features. She was waiting, and this silence, rife with tension, threatened to swallow him whole. "Emily, he faltered again. The facade built with years of pretending was beginning to crack. "I need to tell you about my family, about where I come from." The decision to talk about his past sprouted from the deep-rooted belief that honesty was the most potent form of integrity. But doing so felt like opening a floodgate he wasn't sure how to close. She leaned forward, her eyes widening, the slight tilt of her head revealing a mixture of compassion and concern. "You can trust me, Jake. I've always known there's more to you than the surface. What's going on?" The words emerged with a rush, like water from a burst pipe. "I'm not just some guy who built a business from scratch. My father, he's made choices, terrible ones, that have stained our family name. I grew up in a world where success was measured by deceit and manipulation, and I've been trying to escape that shadow." Each syllable was a brick laid in the wall he'd been constructing. Watching Emily's expression softening fueled his resolve. "I'm afraid that if I confront the truth, I might fracture the foundations of everything I've worked for." "And what about your values?" Her voice was steady, but the question rolled through him like a tempest. "Have you lost those too? Is this about legacy? Or about becoming who you truly want to be?" Her challenge struck deep, forcing him to reconsider the very motivations behind his ambition. Was he truly seeking to create a different legacy, or was he merely repackaging the same avarice into something glossier? The reflection was unsettling, one he didn't want to confront, yet he recognized the urgency. "I don't want to be a product of my father's greed," he confessed, the truth unraveling itself in layers. "I want to foster a new narrative for myself, one that values integrity over wealth." Emily nodded, her gaze unwavering. "But you have the power to redefine what it means to come from that background. You don't have to accept the legacy if you make active choices to change it." Jake's mind whirred. Was it that simple? The idea felt liberating, yet daunting. Could he really redefine himself without letting go of his past? "I want to build something. I want to be an example for my children, for your daughter," he added, surprising himself with the weight of that desire. Children, family, future. The realization deepened his commitment to taking accountability. "Then let's work on this together," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "But you'll have to be willing to be vulnerable. It's about more than just facing your past. It's about sharing that struggle with others." A powerful sense of urgency coursed through him. This wasn't just a conversation. It was the start of a movement, a shift towards transparency, not just for himself, but potentially for all he would encounter in the future. "I will," he promised, determination splintering through his earlier hesitance. "I'll speak my truth, even if it shakes the very foundations I've built." He could feel it, the exhilarating fear of change and the electrifying potential of hope. They had talked about his past, but something else stirred within him too, an unexpected fire ignited by the idea of vulnerability. What had been tightly wound inside him unraveled into possibility. But deeper layers remained unaddressed. What of the confrontation with his father? What of the business that clashed with the values of integrity that now beat strongly in his chest? Would he be ready to face the man who had driven him to this point? Jake looked at Emily, understanding now the depth of this intertwined journey. They were on the cusp of something immense, and the time had come to face the ghosts of his past head-on. "Jake, are you ready to share everything?" she asked, a clarion call to action that previously would have paralyzed him with fear. As he considered her words, he recognized the weight of the choice ahead. "Yes, but I'm not fully prepared for what lies beyond this, especially when it comes to my father. I need to confront him before I can truly begin anew." In that moment, the future stretched out before him, a landscape fraught with uncertainty, but pulsing with potential. Jake's transformation had begun, and now it would require more than his ambition. It demanded courage and the will to face all he had shunned. Was he as ready as he claimed? A final thought echoed in him. The confrontation awaited, steeped in conflict, yet promising resolution. "Then let's plan," Emily said, her determination slicing through the air around them. "The time has come to face what's been hidden for too long." With their breath held as if to share an unspoken agreement, Jake felt an exhilarating pull toward the unknown that lay ahead. Could redemption truly await if he ventured forth uncloaked? Jake's thoughts spun as he left the warmth of Emily's presence and stepped into the cold, swirling air outside. The weight of their conversation pressed on him, a physical force driving him toward both uncertainty and anticipation. His legs moved, but his mind lingered on what lay ahead, the confrontation, the reckoning, and ultimately his fate. He couldn't shake the nagging fear of inadequacy that followed him. His father, a master manipulator and a cold-hearted businessman, was waiting. What was left of that relationship? They hadn't spoken in months. Jake had distanced himself, but now he felt the impending need to face the consequences of a life steeped in familial obligation. Would he be able to stand his ground, let alone transform the narrative that had dominated his upbringing? As he navigated the busy streets, adrenaline coursed through his veins. With each step, he imagined the scenario unfolding in his mind, his father's sharp voice demanding respect, belittling his choice to live a life grounded in integrity. The internal conflict surged. Part of him wanted to bow out gracefully, to allow the familial ties to dictate his path. Yet another part of him was fueled by the empowerment that Emily had sparked within him, a flickering flame that ignited courage. Back in his office, the sterile ambience felt suffocating. Glancing at the framed awards on the wall, he was struck by a weighty realization. Those accolades were merely a facade, trophies of a battle won through maneuvering, not merit. Memories surfaced of times where he had compromised his own principles for the sake of profit. How would he convey this newfound commitment to integrity to others? Jake opened his laptop, typing out a message to Emily. "Can we meet again? I need to discuss strategies on how to approach my father." The message felt like an act of desperation, but deep down he understood it was more than that. It was a commitment to create a strategy that would uphold the values he now clung to fiercely. While waiting for her response, shadows of self-doubt crept back. What if his father responded with ridicule? What if the world he had constructed based on falsehoods crumbled at this confrontation? As empowerment fought uncertainty, he closed his eyes and took deep breaths. Each inhale a reminder of his resolve. Each exhale a release of the doubts he had allowed to fester for too long. Her response arrived sooner than expected. "Absolutely, we'll plan out every detail. This is your moment, Jake. Use it wisely." The words felt like a lifeline, tethering him to purpose and bringing a surge of adrenaline. He could see clearly now. This was not merely a meeting with his father. It was a pivotal moment that held the potential to redefine not just his future, but also the legacies interwoven into his family history. Taking a deep breath, he composed a plan that would chart his course. The strategy would involve emotional resilience and articulation of his new values. If he could confront his past, perhaps he could unearth the depth of his capabilities along the way. The day of reckoning loomed closer, each moment heightening the tension within him. Yet there lay a burgeoning resolve. He needed to confront not just his father, but the aspects of himself he'd long ignored. The ghosts of manipulation, greed, and secrecy would finally have a chance to dissipate in the light of honesty. As the clock ticked down to the meeting, a new urgency ignited within him. It was clear he was ready to fight, whatever that might entail. The undercurrent of bravery stirred within him, blending with fear, forging a new identity meant to break the chains of his past. However, the question remained. Would the confrontation restore his sense of self? Could change truly take root in a legacy so tarnished? With determination etched in his heart and a new identity poised to emerge, Jake prepared. The time had come to step into the lion's den. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself, everything changes. Little did he know that the actual confrontation would unfold into a battle that would either make or break him in ways he could never anticipate. The sun rose, casting sharp rays through the blinds of Jake's apartment, illuminating the chaos of his thoughts. This was it. Every detail he had meticulously planned in his mind was crystallizing into a tangible reality. Facing his father felt like striding into the eye of a storm, centered yet completely engulfed by uncertainty. He glanced at his reflection in the mirror, scrutinizing the man he was becoming. A sharp suit, polished shoes, but the question remained, who was inside? Jake took a moment to breathe deeply, the morning air mingling with the remnants of last night's resolve. He remembered Emily's words echoing in his mind, urging him to embody authenticity. Steeling himself, he dressed not just for a meeting, but for a transformation. Each button he fastened felt like a declaration, a promise that today he wouldn't cower. As he approached his father's office later that day, the tremor in his hands betrayed the calm he attempted to project. The glass facade loomed above him like a fortress, and the elevator felt like a time machine, transporting him back to moments of manipulation and betrayal he had long since hoped to escape. Yet with each passing floor, a small ember of determination ignited within. The moment he stepped through the doors of the corporate lair, the walls seemed to pulse with the memories of his childhood, the cold conversations, the business deals cloaked in shadows, and the ever-present expectation that he would follow in his father's footsteps. This was the place where family pride and cold ambition converged, and Jake had long been a reluctant participant. His father, seated behind an imposing mahogany desk, appeared ageless and formidable. The familiar smirk crept across his father's face, as if expecting Jake to dissolve into the child he once controlled. "Jake," he began, his voice smooth yet gravelly, "what a surprise! To what do I owe the pleasure?" Jake's heart raced. The preparation he envisioned flooded his mind with clarity. "Dad, we need to talk." He wasn't sure whose voice it was, his or the boy who had feared this confrontation, but it propelled him forward. "You've come to your senses. You know this company is your birthright," his father said, bravado lacing every word. "No." The word came out firmer than he had anticipated. He felt his spine straighten, the years of accumulated timidity shedding away like a snake's skin. "I've spent too long living under the weight of expectations that don't belong to me. I want to take my life in a new direction, one grounded in integrity." His father leaned back, disbelief dancing across his features, shrouded quickly by annoyance. "You think you can just walk away? This is the real world, son. You need to play the game," he spat, the edge of his voice cutting like glass. Jake felt the surge of doubt again, pushing against his resolve. Is it really a game when people's lives are at stake? He couldn't believe he was saying it, confronting the essence of everything his father stood for. Time hung, suspended in the air, as Jake braced himself for the retaliation. His father's eyes narrowed dangerously, and for a moment Jake wavered, questioning if he had the strength to hold his ground. But the embers ignited into a flame, illuminating a path forward. "I won't allow the fear of failure to dictate who I am any longer." There was a silence thick enough to cut, a moment where father and son stood on opposite sides of an unbreachable chasm. Jake could see it clearly now, the glimmer of a connection attempting to shatter the facade of commerce and control. But was his father ready for this shift? Before the storm subsided, the door burst open. Emily stepped in, her presence a refuge amid chaos. "Jake, I got your message." She halted, observing the tension. "What's happening?" Jake seized the moment. "Tell her about the new strategies I mentioned, the future I envision." His father's gaze shifted, surprise replaced by a simmering rage. And with realization dawning, Jake sensed the potential unraveling of everything he had feared. But now it no longer felt like just a battle for his own identity. It had become something bigger, and he was unwilling to retreat. As he stood poised, on the precipice of his own evolution, Jake's thoughts raced. Would this confrontation serve as a catalyst for change or destroy him entirely? Somewhere within the turmoil, doubt emerged fiercely. Was he truly prepared for the full fallout of his freedom? The question lingered, pressing down on him, and Jake braced for his father's response, aware that the real test of his metamorphosis was only just beginning. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to coat the air like soot. Jake felt his father's piercing gaze bore through him, a swirling tempest of disbelief and anger. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to stand tall. What would happen next? Dare he even hope for change, or was he courting more chaos? "Jake," his father finally said, his voice a low growl that invited neither softness nor concession. "You're naively romanticizing your so-called integrity. The business world has no place for idealists. It chews them up and spits them out. Jake clenched his jaw, fighting the surge of bitterness rising within him. The years of witnessing that very cycle, of watching his father crush dreams to bolster his empire, poured through him like molten lava, hot and ready to spill. "You don't understand," Jake said, his voice steadying. "I'm not just a pawn on your chessboard anymore. I'm claiming my voice, my vision." There was a power in the words he spoke, a realization that he had not only faced his father, but the childhood fears that had clung to him for too long. His father's response was a wry smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Are you sure this is really you talking, or is it just the influence of that girl?" At that moment, everything went still. Emily's presence hung between them like a bridge spanning an unbridgeable chasm. A flicker of hurt crossed her face as she stepped forward slightly, her resolve crackling in the air. "Jake has every right to pursue his own ambitions, just like you did," she defended, her tone unwavering. "But it's not too late for you to support him rather than diminish his choices." The clash of their wills reverberated through the room, and Jake felt a surge of unexpected gratitude for her defense. It reignited his flame of determination. "I want to create something meaningful," he continued, half to his father, half to Emily. "I want a legacy based on honesty, not manipulation. I envision a company that uplifts communities and nurtures talent rather than stifles it." Yet doubt squeezed at the corners of his resolve. Would his father ever comprehend such a vision, or would he see it only as weakness? "That's a lovely fairy tale, Jake," his father scoffed, the mockery hung thick in the air. "In reality, that's not how the world works, and you," he gestured towards Emily, "should be careful to not lead him astray with your baseless dreams." The dismissal stung, cutting through Jake's heart, and uncertainty flooded back in. Was he truly naive? Was the dream he felt burning in his chest just an illusion? He had started to build his own momentum, yet could he sustain it in the face of his father's scorn? Suddenly, a new wave of clarity crashed through him. This wasn't just about a business or his father's expectations anymore. It was about authenticity, the essence of who he wanted to be in the world, not just for himself, but for people like Emily who believed in him. "Don't you see?" Jake pressed, urgency sharpening his tone. "This is the very thing you taught me to value. Success is not just financial, it's about impact. I owe it to myself to at least try." The silence was deafening. Both men stood at the precipice, their positions stark in contrast. Jake's father bristled, weighing his options, his pride clashing with the idea of releasing his son into the very world he had sought to control. The air was ripe for confrontation, but uncertainty lingered like smoke. Jake sensed change hanging in the balance, a tenuous thread. "Somehow, I can't shake the feeling that you're better at delegating disappointment than delegating responsibility," Jake's father finally murmured, a trace of vulnerability breaking through the facade of control. "What do you mean?" Jake's heart quickened, anticipation intertwining with dread. "If you want to take control, you have to face the consequences of your choice," his father stated, shifting slightly in his chair, the tension in his posture riding a thin line of acceptance and defiance. "But you need to be ready, because the world won't hold your hand." A deep breath steadied Jake. The words were a blade slicing through the haze of failure that had loomed darkly over him. He realized this was not just a confrontation, but an invitation. "Fine," he responded, resolve building within him. "I'll take that risk. I'll forge my own path. But I need you to understand your role in this. If you choose to oppose me, then this isn't just a divide between us. It's a choice that defines your influence in my life." Was he really ready for this? Was his father prepared to watch, to perhaps even support the path that Jake was now insisting upon?
The air crackled with unspoken tension, a new threshold to cross. And suddenly, in the heart of the confrontation, there was something fragile yet potent, the beginning of growth, a flicker of possibility. As the moment stretched, Jake understood that change would demand more than just his own will. It would require a reckoning with fears, family, and the very fabric of his future. And, with Emily by his side, would he choose to step into that unknown? Or would he falter in the face of hard truths? What happens next, he thought, pulse quickening, bracing for a journey he knew would change everything. The confrontation lingered in Jake's thoughts long after he stepped out of his father's office. The oppressive weight of the moment shifted as he walked away from the battleground of ideals.
And with every step, he felt the stakes rising. The taste of defiance mixed with the bitterness of doubt. He wasn't just venturing into the unknown. He was straddling the precipice of a new existence. Emily was waiting for him in the hallway, her eyes a mixture of concern and pride. He wanted to feel buoyed by her presence, but the turmoil from their exchange sliced through the facade of calm he tried to maintain. "So, what now?" she asked, thrusting a lifeline into an ocean of uncertainty. Jake considered her question. What could he share when uncertainty enveloped his thoughts? "I guess I need to figure out what my vision really looks like," he admitted, avoiding her gaze. "It felt powerful to say what I said, but I can't deny that I'm fretting about what comes next." "Powerful is what you need to embrace. You've taken the first step," she encouraged, using her voice to weave threadbare confidence back through his hesitations. "You're not just defined by your father's legacy. Your path can be your own." "I know, but I'm not sure how to translate that into action," he confessed, frustration bubbling beneath his surface. "What does integrity even look like in this world? How do I ensure this isn't just a reaction against him? I want to mean something, make my mark." Emily stepped closer, her glance unwavering. "You're already carving your niche. Start small. Even the smallest of changes can create a ripple effect." The simplicity of her words stunned him. Here was a notion so elementary yet profound. Jake had always concentrated on grand gestures, captivated by the dream of sweeping change rather than the incremental steps necessary to achieve it. He nodded, resolute but still grasping for clarity. "Okay, so where do I begin?" As the two began brainstorming, Jake felt the momentum shift. Each idea ignited flickers of imagination. They spoke about social responsibility, community initiatives, and innovative ways to support local artists and entrepreneurs. Jake found himself envisioning pop-up workshops, mentorship programs, and collaborations that aligned with his values. For the first time, every piece seemed to fit into a larger puzzle. But then doubt crept back in, casting a shadow over their plans. What if my father crushes it before I even take off? As the doubt loomed larger, Jake's mind became a battlefield again, and he could almost hear his father's voice mocking him, belittling his aspirations. "Don't let that stifle you," Emily urged, her hands grasping his shoulders, a physical tether to reality. "You're building something from your values. Even if he tries to undermine you, standing in your truth will take away his power." Her faith stoked the embers of a deeper desire within him. "You're right. I can't let this fear anchor me," he decided, a surge of determination washing over him once more. "If I'm going to break free, I need to raise my voice to the world." "But it's not just about speaking. It's about taking actionable steps," she added. "You'll face pushback, yes, especially from your father. But if your vision includes shaping a better workplace, nurturing talent rather than stifling it, that will resonate. Be ready to share your journey." Jake took a deep breath, tempering his excitement. "This means I have to prepare for the backlash, the fights?" "Yes," she confirmed, unwavering. "And every confrontation will sharpen you. It won't be easy, but each challenge teaches you more about yourself.
He looked into her eyes, where he found a steadfast ally amidst his swirling uncertainties. Suddenly, the prospect of a journey outside his father's shadow felt less daunting. They could forge a world together. "Let's put a plan in place," Jake proposed, a newfound urgency in his voice. They spent the evening sketching their ideas into action, with Jake gradually amplifying his voice, each proposal an act of rebellion against the sidelines of his previous existence. As night cloaked the office, both of them drained from the emotional intensity, Jake realized he'd not only revived his desire, he had also nurtured a budding partnership. The vulnerability of sharing his vision propelled him forward, transforming hesitance into action. But just as hope shifted to action, a persistent itch of dread resurfaced. What unforeseen consequences would arise from challenging his father? Would he really be ready to face the consequences when they inevitably came crashing down? Unbeknownst to him, the real test loomed on the horizon, a confrontation that would unearth hidden truths about his relationships, his values, and ultimately, his very identity. How far was he willing to go to protect the emerging vision he had set into motion? In the days that followed, Jake threw himself into planning, a steady rhythm of strategizing to shape his new vision for the business. Every morning felt charged with possibility, yet the specter of doubt lingered. Each time he sat down to draft ideas, the shadow of his father's disapproval loomed large, whispering reminders of past failures and fears. But Jake was resolved to keep pushing, reminding himself that growth often demanded confrontation. He started with small action items, detailed steps that initially felt trivial but began to build a foundation. Emily became an essential partner in this endeavor, her unwavering support and insights acting as a catalyst for his growth. Together, they identified local talents whose work resonated with their ideals, people who represented the authenticity Jake desired for his own journey. The excitement of potential collaboration sparked new conversations. He could feel the momentum shifting from self-doubt to focused determination. Yet, confronting his feelings of inadequacy was more difficult than rallying ideas. Every setback brought him moments of painful introspection. What if I fail? Jake couldn't shake the question, an unsettling voice that precipitated doubts about his worthiness. He wrestled with the notion that maybe he wasn't equipped to lead the way he envisioned. One afternoon, as they organized a small gathering for local artists he wished to spotlight, Jake experienced a moment of clarity. He wrote a heartfelt invitation detailing their mission and vision, then paused. Would his father's influence cast a long shadow over this event? The fear of his father's judgment sent a tremor down his spine. They could dismiss the casual remarks, but Jake understood the weight they carried in every decision. "What if this goes wrong?" he blurted out, his palms clammy with anxiety. "What if my father sees this as an attack?" Emily, sensing his turmoil, placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "It's okay to fear failure, but it's essential to distinguish between constructive criticism and destructive judgment. This journey is about you and your direction. Stand firm in your vision, regardless of the noise." Her words, a sharp contrast to his spiraling thoughts, summoned a flicker of courage. In his mind, he could see the gathering, a space alive with the energy of shared creativity. Not merely a showcase, but a new beginning. He envisioned exchanges of ideas, collaborations brewing, all rooted in values he held dear. This was about redefining success, creating an environment where talent flourished rather than languished. Later that evening, Jake found himself sitting in his darkened office, heart racing as he put the finishing touches on the invitation. The room was drenched in silence, the slight hum of the neon lights outside a steady reminder of the outside world. Would this act of openness draw them closer to success, or would it push him further into conflict with his father? As he pressed send on the email, dread rolled over him like an incoming wave. Would this be the moment everything changed? Just then, his phone buzzed. A message from Emily flashed on the screen, lighting up his hesitant mood. "Are you ready for this? You're stronger than your fears. Let's make things happen." Jake's heart swelled at her unwavering belief in him, but the nagging fear remained, a relentless tide eroding his resolve. He had to brace himself for whatever fallout would ensue. Confronting his father would be inescapable, and deep inside, he knew that this would not merely be a business endeavor. It was a declaration of his identity, one that could pivot his future. In navigating this path, Jake realized he was also embarking on a journey of self-discovery, where every confrontation would sketch the contours of his evolving identity. What truths would surface when he dared to stand fully in his purpose? In that moment of uncertainty, lurking questions overshadowed his excitement. The thought solidified in his mind. The time had come to face the tide. Would Jake be able to withstand the push and pull of both his aspirations and the powerful forces rallying against them? The stakes had become frighteningly personal. Jake's phone buzzed incessantly, its vibrations rattling against the polished wooden table, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced at it, half expecting a message from his father regarding the invitation. Instead, it was an email notification from one of the local artists he had reached out to earlier. They expressed enthusiasm about collaborating, their excitement emanating through the screen. It was a small victory, yet it felt monumental. Every keystroke in response to the artist's inquiry brought about a surge of confidence. He smiled, imagining the synergy that could arise from their collective creativity, a spark igniting in what had previously felt like a darkened path. A sense of purpose washed over him, easing some of the tension in his chest, even as the underlying current of doubt still swirled. That night, he lay awake wrestling with the implications of his decision. Each minute felt like an hour, and every thought led back to his father. The patriarch's expectations had been a fixture in Jake's life, influencing his choices for far too long. Over the years, he had become accustomed to performing under the weight of those expectations, but now he was striving to carve his own identity. Why was it so hard to break free? Eventually, sleep came, but when morning arrived, it brought with it a fresh wave of anxiety. The upcoming gathering loomed larger than ever. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just an event. It was the test of his resilience and willingness to defy his past. Would he have the strength to advocate for himself, to uphold the vision he had painstakingly crafted? He met Emily at their regular cafe, the aroma of coffee stirring his senses, yet the knot in his stomach hinted at the gravity of the day ahead. "I've been thinking," Jake started, his voice betraying his uncertainty. "What if none of this works out? What if my father decides to intervene, especially now that he's aware?" Emily sipped her cappuccino, her eyes steady on him. "Every moment of self-doubt is a crack in the foundation you're trying to build. You've already taken the first step by sending the invitations. You can't control how others will react, but you can control your response. This is about defining what success looks like for you, not aligning with someone else's expectations." Her confidence in him served as a grounding force. Still, the fear loomed large, his father's voice echoing in his mind. "You'll never be good enough." Yet, with every heartbeat, Jake felt a stronger resolve bubbling within. He was no longer just a mere reflection of his father's aspirations. He wanted to make a mark that was intrinsically his, free from inherited narratives. After a productive brainstorming session, a familiar face emerged amidst the thrumming atmosphere of the cafe, that of a fellow employee from his old job. The recognition was instantaneous, sparking memories of a time when he felt shackled to someone else's dreams. As they exchanged pleasantries, Jake's heart raced with resentment and nostalgia. The encounter forced him to confront the part of his life he had tried to escape. "Nice to see you here, Jake. Still working on your dreams?" the former colleague quipped, a hint of judgment laced in their tone. The comment, cut deeper than intended, igniting lingering fears about how others perceived him. "Yeah, I am. Going in a new direction," he replied, forcing a smile, feeling cornered and exposed. As they talked, Jake began to filter the noise, unearthing a deeper realization. Every interaction, even those that threatened to undermine him, was an opportunity to assert his identity. The subtle barbs only illuminated how far he had to go. He stepped away from the cafe, breathless and alive with possibility. Each breath felt like a leaf turning over, inviting change. But a question loomed, one that would soon demand an answer. How would he respond when the moment with his father finally arrived? Would he stand firmly for his new vision, or would he falter under the weight of comparison and expectation? The urgency of the moment hung in the air, as palpable as the crisp autumn breeze brushing against his face. Now, the impending confrontation with his father would demand all the courage he had amassed. The real test lay just ahead, waiting in the shadows, as he prepared to embrace a confrontation that promised to shift the very foundation of his identity. Jake stood in the center of the bustling event space, the vibrant hum of excitement surrounding him. The atmosphere crackled with energy, alive with creators showcasing their passions and ambitions, each person a testament to the vision he had fought to establish, one rooted in integrity and authenticity. His heart swelled with pride, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. He was finally taking ownership of his narrative, unveiling the very essence of who he wanted to become. Seeing Emily at the entrance, her smile radiated warmth and encouragement, solidifying his resolve. This was not merely an event for the aspiring artists and entrepreneurs. This was his declaration of independence from the toxic legacy he had fought against. Every part of him tingled with the thrill of transformation, but the voices from the past still lingered at the edges of his mind. Moments before the event commenced, a familiar figure appeared, and Jake's heart sank. His father strode in, an imposing presence that seemed to siphon the brightness from the room. The air thickened with tension, their eyes locked, and time seemed to halt. Jake had anticipated this confrontation, but the gravity of the moment was nearly overwhelming. Would the truth he had painstakingly crafted be enough to withstand his father's influence? He approached, each step measured but firm, readying himself for battle. "Dad," he began, his voice steady but edged with apprehension, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I came to see what all this nonsense was about," his father replied, dismissiveness dripping from every word. "You're leaving a good life behind for what? A fleeting dream?" "With respect, this is about more than just a dream. It's a commitment to create something real. This isn't a whim. It's a move towards genuine change," Jake articulated, the weight of his desire fortifying his stance. "What you're doing is reckless."
The tone was sharp enough to cut, but Jake met his father's intent gaze and pressed forward, heart pounding but resolute. "I'm tired of living in the shadows of your expectations," Jake declared, the ripple of his own empowerment washing over him. "It's my turn to define success, not just for me, but for everyone involved in this endeavor. I want to build a company that uplifts rather than undermines, that celebrates artists instead of exploiting them." For a moment, silence enveloped them, with only the distant laughter and vibrancy of the event humming in the background. Then, with a quiet intensity, his father spoke. "And what if it ends in failure, Jake? What then?" Jake's breath hitched at the question, but he quickly composed himself. "I've learned that failure is part of growth. I refuse to allow past fears to dictate my choices anymore. I'll stand by my vision, whatever the outcome may be." The tension between them crackled as his father considered this. Jake remained focused, aware that this confrontation was both an external and internal battle, one where he had the power to redefine not only his connection to his father, but also his own self-worth. "Don't think you can simply walk away from your heritage without consequences," came the warning. Yet Jake no longer felt the weight of intimidation. "I'm choosing to forge my path,"
he reiterated, this time with a steadiness that felt innate. I can no longer tether myself to a legacy built on exploitation. His father studied him, and for the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. Jake felt the pulse of possibility. Change often requires facing uncomfortable truths, Dad. I want you to be a part of this, to return to what we both once believed in. The gravity of those words hung in the air, blurring the harshness of their past. The conversation surrounding them faded, opening a space for reflection, and Jake recognized the leap he had taken. He had fought against disallowing his ambition to be swept aside, and had struck a balance with his past, one that embraced growth over denial. In that tense silence, an unexpected shift unfolded. If you think you can succeed, I won't try to hinder you, his father conceded, a tentative acceptance woven into his tone. But understand that success may not come easily. Jake's heartbeat quickened, a mixture of hope and uncertainty mingling together. I'm ready to face whatever challenges arise. This is my time to prove I can be more than just a product of my upbringing. In that moment, he felt the boundaries of his identity replace despair with assertion, solidifying his growth into something impactful. He was no longer a child seeking validation. He was a man pursuing purpose, equipped with genuine ambition. As he turned to the warmth of the event, the anticipation of the conversations and creativity ahead filled him with an electric vigor. He took a moment to gaze at Emily, who was engaged in conversation with a local artist, an embodiment of hope for the future he aimed to cultivate. And at that pivotal moment, Jake recognized an undeniable truth. He had transformed. No longer shackled by legacy, he had embraced the power of honesty and authenticity. Just before stepping away into the laughter and energy of the room, he whispered a renewed promise to himself. He would not just lead a company, he would embody a new way forward, one marked by integrity and inclusivity. Jake walked toward the stage, feeling the eyes of his community, the artists and those eager for change, all watching. He grasped the microphone, ready to share his vision, knowing he carried with him not just his dreams, but also the strength forged through struggle and honesty. And as he stood before them, it became clear he had truly achieved something remarkable. Through facing his fears and confronting his past, he had metamorphosed into a leader defined not only by achievement, but by authentic connection, a legacy forged anew. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.